been bumped out. We had a few technical difficulties, but we solved them. I was just saying that you would think that after all these years now on Zoom that we would have all this figured out, but we never do. So we should just accept that that's what it is. Good evening and welcome to the Golden Gate Bird Alliance's first recent, we maybe have done this before, but our first travel speaker series event. It's a huge pleasure to be able to welcome you all to this. This is not part of our regular speaker series, but we hope this is the first of many opportunities for us to share, interesting travel stories around birds around the world to our membership and beyond. This is a really fun opportunity to see some of the amazing birds that inhabit our planet. And it is our great pleasure to have, this is because we were struggling at the beginning, I forgot to ask Christopher how to pronounce his last name properly so I don't make a mess of it. So
Christopher Calonje. It's a tough one.
It's not tough. It's not than people who aren't. My name, Glenn Phillips. I'm the executive director here at the Golden Gate Bird Alliance, for those of you who don't know me. And it's a real pleasure to welcome you all tonight. Glenn is one of those names that, to a native English speaker, it's a pretty basic, simple word. But if you're not an English speaker, my name is definitely an easy one to butcher. So I sort of appreciate that it's worth making the effort to not butcher other people's names. Let's see, what do I have to share with you tonight? Oh, that's my problem. I'm on the last slide. That's the problem. So now I can start. All right, here we go. There is still time to register for our fall classes. There are some really amazing classes that are coming up. And one of the ones that I wanted to really highlight was starting on October 18th, writing about birds. It's a really the lecturer for this class, teacher for this class is really amazing. It's none other than our own Eric Schrader with us tonight. But we also have the Magic and Mystery of Migration has room for online and for in-person lectures, which we're testing out in-person lectures here in our office. Actually, I'm zooming in from our office today, so it should be really exciting to have some in-person lectures as well. I'm disappointed to tell you all that and probably no one's surprised that the field trip portion of that class is already fully booked. That should come as no surprise to anyone that our field trips are booked. We haven't. Oh my goodness, our Zoom profile is still. It's my personal one. I usually remember to fix that when I'm. I'm gonna do it right now. Yes, we do have a new name here, and there we go. Here it is. Back. Okay. That's what I need to do. So if you have questions, please put them in the chat. That's how we do things here. If you're new to our lecture series, we ask you to use the chat, and someone will be monitoring it and keeping an eye on it throughout the evening. And yes, as Maureen said, I think I did say that the migration class is both, you can come in person or you can do Zoom, but the field trip part is full. So there are 3 parts to it. And it's pretty exciting.
Glenn?
Yes.
Glenn, my class isn't on here. It begins October 25th. It's called Birding for Fledglings. It's a beginning birder class.
It might be full if it's not on here.
It's not.
It's not full. Okay.
It's got lots of openings.
Lots of openings. Well, and Dawn is also an exceptional teacher. So if you're new to birding, if you're new to birding, there is no better way to really sort of you have a foundational understanding of how to look at birds and identify them than taking Dawn's class. And we have other good teachers too. So you really can't go wrong this season. Everyone, I mean, really, we have a roster of Bruce Mast is teaching, and who else is teaching? Maureen. They're all, I think Jeff Manker is teaching a class this fall. We just really have a great group of teachers. They know birds, they know how to teach, and it's really a pleasure to have such a stellar roster. I was going to move on to habitat restoration. That's what it is. So classes are one thing, but really, if you want to make a difference for birds, there's no better way than to join one of our habitat restoration projects. There are regular and ongoing, and you could get as dirty as you want. Some of these, sometimes my very first day on the job here with the Golden Gate Bird Alliance was actually on a volunteer habitat restoration day at Heron Head Park, and we got a little muddy. We were, it was messy work, but it was really satisfying at the end of the day to have, removed all these invasive plants and really you could see the difference we made in the park. So it's really a lot of fun, and you feel so proud of the work you've done when you're done. And you're a little tired, and how many days are there when you've really done some hard work that bettered the planet? And now I get to hand this over to our travel desk, where two of who are here tonight.
Hi, everybody. So Eric and I have been working hard on our 2024 slate of trips. We're not quite done. If you look at the list here, a couple of them are still missing dates, but we wanted to kind of give you a preview before we make an official announcement. We'll be having 15 trips next year. Some of them you can see have already been subscribed to, but let's look at them briefly. So the first trip and the fourth trip are with Chris's organization, and hopefully we'll be hearing a lot about both of those tonight. The Araucana Lodge is our home-based trip, where you stay in the lodge every night. So you go out, you come back to the same place. We think it's a nice, relaxing option for a birding trip. The Colombia Santa Marta trip can be done as an extension to the Araucana Lodge, but it is not home-based, and I've heard it's got lots of exciting moments in it. Starting back up at the top again, we have 4 domestic trips this year. We've got our beloved Palm Deserts and Salton Sea with Eddie and Noreen of Nature Trip. We have Grouse Extravaganza, first time we're offering this one, where you go to Colorado and look for all the chickens. And we have still working out the details on it, but Wild Latitudes is going to do the Oregon Coast Forest, should be really special. And Birding Ecotours is going to do the Ohio Spring Migration Forest. A lot of international trips too. We've got the Yucatan and Cozumel, which probably a lot of people don't know it, but this is a Mark Preddy trip. One of our beloved trip leaders is doing the Yucatan and Cozumel, and this is the first time that we've offered this trip. Then we've got Sri Lanka. The first Bhutan trip is actually a carryover from pre-pandemic, and we're finally getting around to running it, but it's been full for 3 or 4 years now. The second one has got lots of space in it. The government has reduced the daily tourist fee, so it's more attractive than you might think it might be. Check that out. Borneo, Uganda, Brazil, and Argentina, and Portugal round out the 15 trips for the 2024 offerings. Check it out on goldengateaudubon.org/travel with GGAS, or email us at travelprogram@goldengateaudubon.org. Thank you.
Just in case you were wondering, our website will be changing very soon. to the new domain name, but that it takes a couple of weeks for us to do all that work, and we want to make sure it's done right. So so it'll probably, our new website URL won't launch for another 2 weeks. And our email addresses also will change. They're changing next week though, so that'll happen sooner. Oh, oops, wait, I skipped over. Just in case anyone here is not a member, please join us. We really, we depend on your support. You, our members, are our biggest supporters. You make it possible to protect birds around the Bay and beyond. We couldn't do this without you. It isn't just about the money, although certainly, your financial support is important. But also, you're by joining and becoming a member, you give weight to our voice. So when we go to Sacramento to lobby on behalf of birds, when we talk to the East Bay Regional Park District, when we talk to the San Francisco Parks and Rec, being able to tell them we have 4,000 members in the Bay Area really matters. And if that number were 8,000, we would matter a lot more. So so please, if you're not already a member, join us. And just our regular speaker series next month, Unraveling the Mysteries of the Avian Keratin Disorder, with Danielle Garrick. It's Thursday, September 21st, 7 p.m. right here on Zoom. So I look forward to seeing you all then. Now I'm going to pass this on to Eric is going to introduce Chris.
Thanks, Glenn. Our presenter tonight is Christopher Calonje, and Chris grew up in Colombia, but spent a lot of his younger years in California, and in fact graduated from Humboldt State University. And he's led hundreds of tours in Colombia, birding tours all over the country. And in 2009, he founded Colombia Birdwatch to promote sustainable tourism. He currently devotes a lot of his time to various nonprofit conservation groups and local communities, and of course to his lodge, which I'm going to mention now, because I saw Chris give a talk a few years ago as the lodge was just opening. And I think Chris will probably tell you this maybe in a little more detail, I don't know, but he opened at the beginning of the pandemic, which wasn't very, opportune time, but did a wonderful job. They had a lot of visitors from Colombia the first couple of years, and they made it work. And the presentation I saw, as I said, was just amazing. It was so compelling that the following year, I rounded up a couple of my friends and we visited Araucana Lodge. And since then, it's become a popular setting for the tour that Don mentioned, our home base tour, which is wonderful. As Don said, you show up, you unpack your bags, and you settle in for a week of birding and comfortable living. Chris, welcome to the special installment of GBBA Speaker Series. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Eric. Thanks, Glenn and Don. And hello to everybody. Thanks for the introduction, Eric. I'm going to share my screen and get this presentation up. Let's see if I can do. Okay. Let me. So. Give me a second. Haven't done one of these in a long time. So there. Okay. Is it Eric or Glenn, are you seeing this fine?
Yes, you're all good.
Okay, thank you. Well, I wanted to welcome everybody today. I think Eric gave a good introduction. I'm going to talk a little bit more about myself here in a second. But the idea today is to talk about how bird watching has evolved in a country like Colombia, where, we went from being in a civil war and having basically zero tourism to a very drastic change in the political situation in Colombia that allowed tourism to start being attractive for people from all over the world to come to Colombia. But in all reality, we never had tourism. So since I got involved in in bird tourism more than a decade ago, I've been able to really witness and be a part of an industry that started from zero, basically. So it's been really interesting, and I kind of want to tell that story, talk to you guys a little bit about the lodge, a little bit about the Golden Gate trip we do every January. I probably, because of time, won't get too much into the Santa Marta portion about it. But if you have questions, feel free to email us. I'm really good at getting back at people, calling you, anything like that, to discuss specific questions about these trips. I want to thank Juan Jose Arango. He's a good friend of mine, Colombian birder, who allows me to use his beautiful pictures in my presentations and my marketing materials. And Eric for inviting me to do this presentation. As he explained, I did a similar presentation to this one for the Kern Audubon Society, and Eric was in that presentation, and a year later he was traveling in Colombia. So we become great friends, and again, thank you, Eric. This right here is a tooth-billed hummingbird. If you look at him closely, he's got little teeth on its bill. A lot of hummingbirds, their main diet is nectar, but they have to get their protein somewhere, so they actually catch insects. And this one is a little bit more specialized for insect catching than any other hummingbird. So it has a serrated bill, and this bird is found in the Pacific lowlands of Colombia. Okay, I'll start. These are some pictures of our first Golden Gate trip last year. I actually see a few of the folks that went on that trip are watching the presentation. So hi, everybody. Glad you made it. This is the group having some after birding wine at the terrace at Ocana Lodge, having a good time. Like Eric said, it's a more of a relaxing bird trip. You're gonna get a lot of species. I'll talk more about bird diversity in the area, but it allows you to come back to a very comfortable lodge with great food, and you're not having to pack and unpack your bags every day. There's Marjorie at the top of the Santa Marta Mountains, and Claudia and Sharon. They were part of this adventure, and glad to see some of you guys are chiming in today to watch this presentation. Okay, so I was born in Colombia. When my mom's American and my dad's Colombian, and I went to an American school in Cali, Colombia. When I turned 18, I was drafted by the Colombian military, and this was during one of the most violent times in Colombian history. So being a US citizen and not wanting to participate in a war I didn't believe in, I was sent over to live with my grandparents in Fresno, where I went to City College for a year. And while I was there, I heard about Humboldt State University, where I decided to go because it's a lot nicer than Fresno. And I got my degree in environmental science there. Immediately after college, I got a job in Oregon as an environmental consultant. And I did that for about 10 years. While I was on vacation, one of the winters, I'd go to Colombia to escape the winter in Oregon for a couple months. And I stopped at a little store, and I saw a little advertisement for bird watching trips. So it kind of sparked my interest. I was never really a birder, but I called up the number and started talking to these folks, and it was a group called Mapalina. It was a nonprofit organization, and their main goal was to train the local kids in these rural areas to become birding guides. A lot of these kids end up, having to go into town to get jobs, jobs that aren't well paying. And this was an opportunity to get kids involved in something that's going to help protect nature, but also provide job opportunities for them and give them life skills that they would not get in any other job as being a bird guide. So this right here is my first birding tour that I did. This was in 2009, 14 years ago. It was with 5 gals from the Klamath Basin Audubon Society, and I look back at this and can't believe we actually made it through that 10 days, because it was my first one. I really knew nothing about operating tours, but we survived. We all had a good time, and the rest is history. So for those of you that don't know much about Colombian geography, it's Colombia with an O. A lot of people make the mistake of writing it Colombia, but it's Colombia. It borders with Panama. It's the northernmost country in South America, the only country in South America to have a coast on both the Caribbean and the Pacific Ocean. And we have 5 major natural regions in Colombia. We have the Caribbean area, we have the Pacific, the Orinoquia area, which is a vast grassland that borders with Venezuela. We call it the Llanos. And Colombia comprises about 25% of the Amazon region. The most populated areas in Colombia are found in the Andes Mountains, and the Andes Mountains actually, they're the longest mountain range in the world, and they're one chain. They start in Argentina, and they're one chain throughout most of South America. But when they reach Colombia, you split into 3 different ranges, and we get the Western Andes, the Central Andes, and the Eastern Andes. 2 great valleys in between. The Cauca Valley between the Western and Central Andes. The Cauca Valley is where the city of Cali is, where I grew up, a city of about 3 million people. And the Magdalena Valley between the Central and Eastern Andes. So this splitting of the Andes is one of the reasons why we're so biodiverse. And then adding to that the fact that we have the eastern grasslands, a vast portion of the Amazon, Pacific lowlands, and the Caribbean coast. The largest mountain in Colombia is the Santa Marta Mountains. It's the tallest coastal mountain in the world. It reaches about 5,600 meters. And it's a very important center of endemism, because as you can see in this picture, it is totally isolated from the Andes Mountains. It's its own little thing up in the north. So the cool thing about our Golden Gate trips is if you decide to go to do both trips, you can enjoy a good portion of the Western Andes, experience birding in the Andes, and also in the Santa Marta Mountains and along the Caribbean coast. In terms of bird diversity, Colombia is #1 worldwide in diversity of birds. We're actually now at like 1,970 species. We have 86 endemics. In the last 20 years, we've found 20 new species in Colombia. A lot of this has also been due to the fact that areas that were once war zones are now areas that Colombian biologists can go visit. 20 years ago, it was too dangerous to go, and now that we're able to venture out into these areas, we're discovering new species, and we're finding new records for Colombia, and species that we thought were only in Ecuador, we're finding in areas of southern Colombia So our list keeps on growing, and that's great for bird tourism. Um, we have 20% of the world's species, so about 2,000 species, and Colombia only occupies 0.8% of the world's landmass. So just wrap that around your head. 20% of the world's species and less than 1% of the world's landmass. We have more species than Europe and North America combined, and we have over 160 important bird areas. Okay, so I'll go back a little bit to my story. So when I read about these birding trips, I met with this group. They were doing a great job training these kids, but they did not have the ability to promote bird tourism internationally. So I sat down with them and I said, hey, I live in the States. I can talk to different Audubon groups. I know nothing about birding or doing birding tours. So let's kind of make an alliance. If you guys show me the ropes, I can help promote this in the US. So I took a couple months and I bought a camera and I went with my friend Carlos Mario, who was the director of Mapalina, and we started creating these routes. Keep in mind, this was a time where Colombia didn't have much infrastructure in terms of hotels in rural areas. We didn't have any trained guides. It was hard to get around. So it was actually pretty fun traveling around Colombia and experiencing what tourism could become if we worked hard at it. And as I mentioned, one of the reasons why tourism began as an industry in Colombia is because Colombia signed a historic peace deal with the FARC, which is a communist guerrilla group that was financed also by illegal drug trade. So they gained a lot of power. They were, pretty much almost took control of Colombia at one point, until the government of Álvaro Uribe in 2002 started cracking down on them and going after them offensively. This was obviously with help from the US, and basically beat him down for so many years, beat him down so hard that they were kind of forced into going into a peace deal with the Colombian government. We started tourism in 2009 because the Colombian government and the military had gotten enough of a stronghold on the FARC that the FARC were no longer an issue in terms of security and security problems for tourists. So after they're finding this out, we start these peace talks in 2012. In 2013, the talks kept going on. There was basically 5 main points. One of them had to do with land and rural development in Colombia. So trying to make land more productive and give back a lot of the land to the people that actually work it. One of the points was solving the illicit drug trade problem. Another main point was the FARC members that went into this peace deal had to admit to all the wrongdoings they did. And we're going to create a history of what happened during this 55-year civil war. The idea being, if you know what happens and if we know the whole story, maybe we can prevent it from happening again. One of the last points was the FARC had to forfeit their weapons to the United Nations, and they were all smelted into making a monument in the city of Bogota to remember what the nation has been through. On September 23, 2016, the peace deal is signed. And by June of 2017, all their weapons have been turned into the United Nations. So this is great news for Colombia, great news for the country, great news for tourism in the country. We've been developing it since 2009 and getting ready for this, but this really kind of set the precedent for people looking to Colombia as a tourist destination. I do promise to have some eye candy for you guys during the presentation. This is a purplish mantled tanager that can be observed in the Western Andes of Colombia. So, with the peace deal signed, with the security situation in Colombia improving, we actually, the Audubon Latin American Alliances program came to Colombia. My good friend John Myers was the director at that time, and they decided to do a study, a market study, on birding in Colombia. So they called this study La Paz es mucho más que palomas, which translates that peace is more than white doves. And the idea was to demonstrate the economic benefit that the peace agreement had on bird tourism in Colombia. And this was instrumental. USAID was involved. There was several Colombian organizations involved, Calidris, the Universidad de los Andes. Audubon had a big part to do with this. And the idea was to show the Colombian government how birding tourism can be very beneficial to the Colombian economy, especially the economies of rural areas that were the ones that were most affected by the 55-year civil war, which was great. You guys, I know they sent out surveys to all Audubon members. You might have gotten one. So when we got these surveys back, there was a lot of questions in terms of how much are you willing to spend? Would you like to come to Colombia? And we found out that there was lots of people, not only in the US, but around the world, that were interested to come to Colombia. And we found out that this had great value because bird tourism is the kind of tourism we need in a developing country, where tourism is just beginning, because it's low volume and it's low volume and high income. Birders are usually retired, they have time to travel, and they want to have an organized trip with all the amenities and all the comforts, and they're willing to spend $300 to $500 a day on a birding tour, which really opened up the eyes of the Colombian government, and the Colombian government started really investing in promoting bird tourism in Colombia. And I was happy to be a part of this. I'll talk a little bit more about this in a few seconds. So in 2015, me and Carlos Mario, who was the director of Mapalina, started the Colombia Bird Fair. This was a bird festival in Cali, and the idea is we wanted to promote bird tourism in the Cali area, but also around all of Colombia. So, this was a big step in putting Colombia on the map as a birding destination. We got interviewed by CNN in Espanol. During that time, also, we helped out Noah Stryker beat the record for the big year, although it was the year after it was beaten by Dorian. And this kind of got Colombia in the map as a birding destination. So we tried to promote it as much as we could. And at this point, we also realized we had to develop routes where we had accommodations, vehicles, and we really realized we needed to start training local guides. So this was a big part of my involvement in Colombia, was training guides, checking out accommodations, making routes. And we started with this one, which is based out of Cali. And it's very similar to the one we do on our Golden Gate trips. And when building this route, um, you know, we really we realized that there was a very important lack of good infrastructure, nice birding lodges in the rural areas of Colombia. Happened so that during this time, my grandfather, who had passed away, had left us a property that's 40 minutes from Cali. It sits on 30 acres. 20 acres of it are a forest that he's protected since he bought the property. He used to grow flowers there and organic vegetables, and we inherited the property, my family and I, and it was the perfect place to build a birding lodge because it was located to some of the greatest birding in the Western Andes, close to Cali. We had the space, so as a family, we decided to invest in building the Araucana Lodge, which we did and completed 6 months before the pandemic hit, which was a little trying, but we survived. And um, one of the reasons we were able to survive too is I forgot to mention when we created the Columbia Bird Fair, one of the other objective, the main one being promote birding in Colombia to the international community, but we wanted to get Colombians interested in birding. So we had local field trips, activities for kids, and excuse me, we started to get the locals interested in birding. And this proved to be very beneficial to us during the pandemic because a lot of the places where that had to close during the pandemic and were allowed to open, like at the lodge, we were able to open, but we didn't have any international flights coming in. So we, during about 6 months, relied on the local market, and it really helped having Colombians that were hooked on birding. Colombians are very proud of their country. You'll see that when you travel there. They want to show you, they want to talk to you, they want to meet you. They're very proud. And being number one in bird species in the world, I think kind of incited this pride, and people got out to birding. And you go to Colombia now and sometimes you see more local birders than you see international birders, which is a great thing. Lots of kids are getting into it, and they're really into the bird photography aspect of it because, as you can see, we have some beautiful birds. I'm going to show an episode of the birder show that was filmed in Araucana. If you guys haven't watched this is a really cool, funny show hosted by Chris Bell and Diego Calderon. Most of them are filmed in Colombia, but they're really keen on supporting the local communities. They usually donate a pair of binoculars to a local guide, and it's a really fun show to watch. So I gotta stop sharing so I can share a different screen with the video. Where is that? Show all windows. Okay. Where is it? This one? Yeah. Okay. So sorry. Okay.
Chris, we don't have audio.
Oh. Huh. I wonder.
On the share screen on the bottom left corner, there's a little check you have to make.
Okay. bottom left here. Let me. Huh. I don't see it. Let me see if I stop share. Oh, share sound. Okay, perfect. Sorry. Sorry about that. Okay, here we go again. Let's start it again.
I'm here in the Colombian Western Andes at Araucana Lodge. For my money, one of the best birding lodges in all of Colombia, certainly one of the most luxurious. Let's go take a look inside. So the first thing you see when you come into Araucana Lodge is this beautiful, really well-lit reception. There's loads of big windows here, beautiful light, lots of plants, bird-friendly windows, as you can see here, these little white dots to avoid bird collisions, and the dining area. Most of the food here is produced locally, the vegetables, the eggs, the coffee, all organic, locally grown, just in the front garden of the house. A really nice touch. So one of the things that really captured my imagination when I first arrived at Araucana is this incredible landscaping. The design is beautiful. The house is set around this wonderful open garden. One of the things that's best about this hotel is the light. So Araucana Lodge has 10 rooms, can probably sleep up to about 25 people. Lots of birding groups choose to stay here because, well, the location is unbelievable. A lot of the rooms have these really nice little terraces and balconies in front where you can hang out, have your coffee, and do some birding. There's some nice birds just right here. Apart from these beautiful facilities, one of the things that makes Araucana Lodge so special is its location. We're no distance away from the Pacific lowland jungles of San Cipriano. Cali is less than an hour away, the cloud forests of kilometer 18, Doña Dora's place. You really are right in the middle, in the heart of some of the best birding in all of Colombia, in all of South America, staying here.
So the property has a bird list of over 200 species. So mind-boggling avian diversity. We started as a family project, and we really try to focus on healthy, delicious food, quality service, and a very personal experience for our guests.
Quite frankly, there's almost nowhere else in Colombia that offers this level of luxury with such an incredible birding location.
Okay. Okay, let's get back to the presentation. And where were we? Okay, so those guys are a lot of fun. I'll do a couple more short episodes that they filmed in the different areas to kind of give you a more video idea of what to expect in the areas you bird around Araucana Lodge. Here's a few other pictures. We're right next to a bamboo forest. All the gardens were designed by my father, who's a landscape architect. Very ample rooms, hot water, Wi-Fi, great food. Some of the birds you can find on the property are grayish piculet, which is an endemic tiny woodpecker. The Colombian chachalaca, also found on the property, also endemic to Colombia. Apical flycatcher, also found on the property and endemic to Colombia. And we do farm to table. So one of the things that we spent a lot of time during the pandemic doing because we had staff that was on site, so we were able to work outdoors. We really ramped up the organic garden at the lodge. Blue-headed sapphire, one of the visitors that comes to the feeders at the lodge. Long-billed star-throat. And the near-endemic purple-throated wood-star, tiny, tiny little hummingbird. This is a terrace where we have evening drinks after a long day of birding. Nice views of the mountains and the bamboo forest. And bar-crested antshrike, which is on our logo, another near endemic that can be found on the property and very attractive bird. Okay, so I do kind of want to go through a little bit about our commitment as a family to promote sustainable travel in Colombia and doing this at the lodge. So, you know, we have a program where we have the local kids come to the lodge and learn about birding. And the idea being that hopefully maybe someday one of them wants to become a bird guide. During the pandemic, there was a really cool thing that happened was as you know, there's about 20 different companies. When I started mine in 2008, there was 3. Now there's 20, probably more than 20, because it keeps growing and growing. But we all got together and created a fund. Basically, it was on a Colombian platform similar to the ones they have in the US. And we solicited donations from people that had been on our trips earlier. The idea being we would pool all the money into a fund and then distribute the funds to drivers, guides, restaurants, anybody who was part of the birding tour operation that was in trouble was able to apply for funds from this fund that we created with help from travelers from all around the world. So it showed a lot of unity and it allowed us to survive during these hard times. You know, also as a businessman and with all the other tour companies, we didn't want our guides to go have to find another job. We wanted them ready when the pandemic ended to start working. So a lot of the places we visit also, we didn't want them to go under because we rely on these places once we start to operate tours again. So worked out nicely. Everybody survived the pandemic. And as soon as flights starting opening up, people started to come to Colombia to go birding again. During this time also, after Audubon did their market study on birding in Colombia, they started developing these routes. So we were a part of this. Audubon did an awesome job. They created 5 different routes in Colombia and went in there, started training local guides, started training hotels on how to better their service, how to better their food, and really getting the community involved so they could become part of this birding tour world. And to date, some of my best guides were original students in these programs that Audubon did throughout all of Colombia. Okay, in terms of economic sustainability at the lodge, you know, we have a little store where we sell things from local artisans, try to support them. Our beer we get from a kid that brews beer about 2 miles away. We grow our own coffee. Our tea is locally grown. There's a big tea plantation. The only one in Colombia is near the lodge. So we try to buy as much as we can locally. And this way, the you know, the income that comes into the lodge is spread throughout the entire area. When we started decorating the hotel, we also decided that this would be good way to promote the artist in the area. So we commissioned different local artists to do the art for the room. So this was our way of also supporting local artists. This was also during the pandemic, so it was also a way to support them through the pandemic. In terms of environmental sustainability, well, we try to source everything locally. We reutilize our rainwater for the gardens. We have soap dispensers in the bathroom instead of little plastic bottles of amenities. We provide drinking water to all our guests. We don't sell bottled water. And this is our way to impact the environment in the area. All our food scraps go into a compost pile. Some of it goes to the chickens, so the chickens get the scraps, and then we eat the eggs that the chickens give us. I'm also part of a nonprofit called Ecotonos, and we were able to purchase 50 hectares of pristine forest right above the lodge. This is the forest up in the mountains you can see on the bottom right picture. And this is actually the source of water for the local aqueduct. So in protecting this forest, we're protecting the birds, we're protecting the forest, but we're also protecting the lifeblood of the community, which is the local aqueduct. Also with Ecotonos, the idea is to turn these 50 hectares into a living biological study station. My friend Ruben Dario, he's the director, and he got his PhD at Duke University and is working with the local university. And the idea is to do exchanges with Colombian students and US students so they can come do research on this property. Okay, now to some eye candy, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the different birding areas near the lodge. One of them is the infamous Kilometer 18 area, where the star of the show is the multicolored tanager. You can see why, very photogenic, also endemic to Colombia. And Kilometer 18 is one of the best places to see this bird because it comes to the feeders. This place is of historical significance in terms of birds because the Kilometer 18 was the first area that Frank Chapman visited in Colombia when he started doing his bird survey. So he was a curator at the National History Museum in New York, and he came into Colombia in 1910, came on a boat through Buenaventura, which is a couple hours from the lodge, and mule packed all the way to the Kilometer 18 area. And he actually stayed in the area about 3 months. This was the first of many expeditions him and his team did in Colombia, studying the avian diversity. They went to 74 different localities, 18 different departments, which is what we call our states. And they collected about 15,000 specimens with 9 new species discovered and 100 new subspecies discovered. So really neat about this area is we have data that goes back, bird data that goes back to 1910. And in comparing what was seen in 1910 to what is seen now, we're actually finding that there's a lot of birds that were in the area back then that we don't find in the area now. So this is, I guess, great ammunition to promote more conservation and more funds coming in the area to protect the forests, create more wildlife corridors, things like that. Steely vented hummingbird. Again, the multicolored tanager. Green and black fruit eater. Booted racquet-tail. And we've identified several Andean cock of the rock leks within a driving distance from the lodge. So it's also you know, a great opportunity to get to see up close one of the most iconic birds in South America, which is the Andean cock of the rock. Also recently, there was a new species of ant pitta discovered in the area. You know, being able, you know, being a biologist, a biology student in Colombia now, as opposed to 15 years ago, is a lot different. 15 years ago, you learned everything from books. You were not able to go into the field. So as things started changing, these biology students are able to get out in the field, and they were doing some research near in a community park near the lodge. One of the students was walking by. She heard something she never heard before, took a picture of this bird. Turns out it's a new species. So it goes to show there's a lot more to be discovered in Colombia, and having these young students out there and these young guides out there seeing the bird life is really beneficial to our species list and to conservation. Now, next place we're going to go see is the Anchicaya Valley. So this is about, the valley starts about an hour drive from the lodge, and the lodge is at 1,600 meters. Kilometer 18 is a cloud forest, so it's at 2,000 meters. It's much higher. And the Anchicaya Valley starts about 1,200 meters. So the nice thing about the lodge is you can get to all these different elevations within a short drive. This valley was a place that inspired Steve Hilty, who wrote the first bird guide to Colombia. He was actually doing research back then in this valley in the 1980s. He was doing an internship. Pretty crazy for an American to be in this area, but he fell in love with the birds, and there was really not a lot of, there wasn't any field guides in Colombia. So he decided to write this field guide, and it was actually used for many years in Ecuador and Venezuela and Peru and the neighboring countries, because it was the only guide available for South America. So the historic importance of the Anchicaya Valley is that it got Steve to write this first field guide, and this inspired hundreds of people, not only in Colombia, to become bird watchers and to find the love of birds. But Colombian biologists often joke that, you know, for so many years they had this book with these beautiful birds, and you weren't able to go see them because it was too dangerous. And once people got out, it was like, oh my God, I've been looking at this book for 10 years, and now I can actually go see them in in real person. So another interesting historical story about the area around Cali in terms of historical significance for bird watching. Okay, I'm gonna share another video that talks about Doña Dora's place. This is a lady that we met when we first started doing birding tours. She sold empanadas. She had a little shack on the side of the road, and we gave her, I gave her her first hummingbird feeder, and we told her to start setting out bananas for the birds, and she kind of thought we were crazy because there was no tourism there, but we told her eventually it will come. Just keep on it, and one day you'll be able to make a living off of people that come look at your birds. And you go there today, and she has a 3-story building, a hotel with 4 rooms. The whole family works there. So it's one of the most beautiful things about being involved in bird tourism in Colombia for the past 12, 13 years, is seeing families in rural areas who had nothing, who now make a pretty decent living showing off the birds to people from all around the world. Okay, so share this. We're gonna watch this video that talks about Doña Dora. Okay, let me see.
This is Avistamiento de Aves Doña Dora birding. Who is Doña Dora? She's a local lady who moved here years and years ago to sell lunches and snacks to passing drivers on their way from Cali down to the Pacific coast. Birders started coming here and discovered that this place is not just a beautiful location, but it's home to some of the most interesting, rare and unique Choco endemic species and rare range-restricted tanagers, hummingbirds, barbets and birds in the whole region. Welcome to the best backyard birding spot in the world. As you can see here, the son of Doña Dora, who's an excellent bird artist, has painted murals all over the house of some of the most charismatic and special species that you can find here. So yeah, let's carry on into the kitchen. I mean, this place might be famous for the birds now, but it's still famous for the delicious food made by our host here, Doña Dora, the owner of this place, for whom it's named, the delicious cheese empanadas.
A las empanadas le han hecho mucha bulla, pero más por las aves. Y esto después de que le trae a uno ingresos, es una terapia muy buena. Uno siente un descanso, un relaje, se va cariñando más a ellos.
The thing that makes this place so special is that we're in this amazing biological corridor from the western flanks of the Western Andes. We're at about 1,300 meters, and this forest just carries on down the Anchiqueya River all the way to the Pacific. It's probably some of the best birding on the continent, and right here we're in this privileged position where we have this connection with the forest, and all these incredibly rare, normally very hard to see birds are coming here to feed. This place is like a treasure trove of little magic corners. Down here is like hummingbird central. You can see there's a handful of hummingbird feeders and lots of incredible perches. Here you can easily register 15 hummingbird species in just a couple of hours of casual birding, just meters away from you. But you know what? The first floor is great because of the birds and the cheese empanadas. The second floor is great for the bedrooms, but it's the third floor where the real birding magic happens. Let's go and take a look. So this third floor is actually a relatively recent addition to Doña Dora's place. I mean, literally thanks to birding, she's been able to add an extra floor to her house. This used to be the roof. Now we have this incredible open air, entire floor observatory, 360 degrees. I honestly can't think of many better places in the world where I'd be happier than just sitting here with a coffee, doing some birding, watching toucan barbets right in front of me.
Okay, share screen. Okay, so very quickly, I know we're running out of time here, but this is a group of us where we made a donation of bird guides and binoculars for the local guides in the area. A lot of them don't have the right equipment, so the most important thing is having a good field guide and a good pair of binoculars. And this is our way of kind of giving back to the community. Also, as a business owner, it helps us a lot to have knowledgeable guides with good equipment because they're on site constantly finding new records, seeing where the species are, seeing what trees have fruits in them. So it's invaluable to have good local guides and good local guides with the right equipment. Some of the species we can see at Doña Dora's. These are all beautiful tanagers. They're called Choco endemics because they're found in the Choco region, which goes all the way from northern Colombia all the way to northern Peru along the Pacific coast. The highlight of the show at Doña Dora's is the toucan barbet. Okay, and quickly, last place I want to talk to you about is San Cipriano. It's a Afro-Colombian village. It's located in the Pacific Lowlands, about a 90-minute drive from the lodge. And it's a village where there's no roads that go to this village. There's only an abandoned railroad. So the locals have devised what they call brujitas. Basically, it's a wooden cart with a motorcycle attached to it. And that's how you get to the San Cipriano Reserve, which is around 200 meters in elevation. And you see totally different birds than what you're going to see at Doña Dora's, at the lodge, or at kilometer 18. I'm going to show just a little portion of last episode of the Birder Show that's going to show you really how the ride on the Brujita is. This one. And
So, I mean, we should probably start off by explaining to people where we are and why we decided to come here for the final episode of this series.
So many reasons, but you know, one of the best birding towns in Colombia, no doubt, for lower elevation and in the Pacific is San Cipriano. It combines a lot of cool things, like great birds from the lower Pacific belt of the Chocó biogeographical region, and it's very accessible.
San Cipriano is one of the most interesting towns, I would say, in Colombia to arrive at. There's no road access to San Cipriano. What there is rail access, but there are no trains really that pass through anymore, the occasional train. This used to be the line that connected Buenaventura with Cali and the rest of Colombia. These days, the entrance is through these amazing little contraptions known as brujitas. So we're about halfway through our Brujita ride from the roadside into San Cipriano. As you can see, we're surrounded by all this incredible jungle. It really is like a theme park. We've been through these two tunnels on these kind of old train tracks, this rickety platform. It's how I imagine a ride at Jurassic Park would be if Jurassic Park had existed as a theme park.
And you know, we've seen the dinosaurs flying by, so you know, endemic Chocó birds.
Yeah, exactly.
Being able to bird actually from La Brujita is one of the most unique experiences that you know you can get when birding is about.
I'm not sure I've travelled anywhere birding on a more unusual form of transport.
By any means. Riding lessons, Brujita riding lessons.
And the thing is that the Brujita is amazing, but also we shouldn't forget at all about the destination at the end of the line, which is San Cipriano. San Cipriano is, how many people do you think live in that town?
I'm not sure, but you know, less than 1,000 people.
Yeah.
Less than 1,000 people. It's a small town, actually built next to the Escalareta River. There is the river where the big city of Buenaventura gets their drinkable water from. And it's a reserva, it's a forestry reserve covering all this area and protecting it for the good use of the water of Buenaventura.
okay, so let's just get back to presentation. Okay, so this was the last destination I wanted to talk about. We went over 4 very different areas for birding that you can reach from the lodge, from an easy day trip. The San Cipriano being the last one, which has amazing birding, and getting there is half the fun. You may be able to run to a long-wattled umbrella bird. Rose-faced parrot is one of the near endemic species of parrots you can find there. The Chocó trogon, aptly named as it's a Chocó endemic. And that's it. I hope everybody enjoyed the presentation. I'm a little out of practice with these. I apologize for that. It took a little bit longer than I thought it was going to take, but thank you everybody for watching. if anybody needs wants to talk, has questions about Colombia, please shoot me an email. You can find our website at columbiabirdwatch.com.
Chris, we had a couple of questions.
Okay.
Yeah. One of them early on was about the Colombian Amazon and whether it's currently under threat. And what about other important habitat regions? Are they undergoing destruction from development, mining, etc.?
Yes. It's actually kind of a weird irony, because a lot of these places that were inaccessible during the Civil War were also inaccessible to mining companies and logging companies and oil exploration companies, because it was too dangerous for them to go into these areas. So now it's a little bit of a paradox, because we have these areas that were, not accessible to birders or biologists or botanists, that now are accessible to them to go study, but they're also now becoming accessible to Canadian logging companies and mining companies and things like that. So a huge portion of the Colombian Amazon is still pretty pristine. It's not as bad, I think, as what's going on maybe in Brazil. But it is something we need to worry about it. And I think that's the beauty of bird tourism. When I mentioned it was, low volume, high dollar, if you get the community involved and they see that they can make a living and provide a good life for their kids and their grandkids and the whole family, then they're going to be more prone to protect the forest they live in. When we found one of the first cockler rocklecks, one of the local campesinos would take them into, would capture them, take them into town and sell them as cage birds. He quickly learned that if he doesn't capture them and take them into town, every time a birder comes to see him, he's going to get $30 in his pocket. And if a group of 8 birders comes to see the bird, he's going to get $240 in his pocket. And he can sell it over and over and over again sustainably, as opposed to going into town and selling it once.
And there was a question about the plantings at the lodge. Were the specific plants there planted to attract the birds, or would the birds be there anyway?
The birds are going to be there anyway, but we do have hummingbird feeders, but we try to plant as many species, flower species for the hummingbirds. So when you look at our bird feeder station, there's flowers all around there. So they have so they're also visiting flowers at the same time. And then our property has 20 acres of forest, and it's all native trees. So that's a pretty good pull for the native birds.
Okay, that's all the questions I see. Thank you.
Okay.
And if you're interested in any of the Colombia trips, and Chris, you didn't even get to talk about Santa Monica. So another time.
Yeah, just very quickly, Santa Marta is an amazing trip. You get to bird the iconic Santa Marta Mountain, which has 22 endemic species, but you also get to visit communities on the Caribbean coast and visit coastal dry forest and wetlands along the coast. So it's got a little bit for everybody. It's a there's some difficult roads, but sometimes these difficult roads take you to some of the best birding in the world.
Okay. I don't know if you mentioned at the outset that you're actually up here visiting. You're at your sister's right now, right?
Yeah, I'm in Alameda. My sister's at Burning Man, so I'm taking care of her kids.
All right. We hope you enjoy your time in the Bay Area. And
thanks, Eric.
Some of us will come visit you in in Colombia.
Please do. And like I said, I'm gonna write down my email in the chat in case anybody has any questions, or if you reach me by email and you want to talk on the phone, we can exchange numbers and we can take it from there.
And I'd like to thank all you folks from Golden Gate Bird Alliance who tuned in tonight. And as Glenn said at the outset, we're hoping to make this maybe a quarterly or 3 times a year event, having various folks that we work with around the world come and talk to us about their particular areas and the issues they face. Okay.
Thanks, Chris. That was wonderful. See you Saturday.
Thanks, Don. See you Saturday. And thanks everybody for tuning in. Have a great night.
Good night.
All right.